His academic journey has taken him from Trinity College, Dublin to NLSIU, enriching classrooms and inspiring young minds. His contributions have earned him several prestigious national and international honors, including Japan's Grand Cordon of the Order of the Rising Sun, one of the highest civilian awards. Above all, Dr. Kumar is a passionate defender of human rights. His recently published book, Guardians of the Republic, is a collection of essays, whereby he exhorts the readers to look beyond headlines and reflect on deeper issues. With Dr. ASHWINI is MANRAJ GREWAL Sharma, who is a journalist who has spent her career navigating the crossroads of power, people, and the truth. As the resident editor of the Indian Express in Chandigarh, she leads coverage across Punjab, Haryana, and Himachal Pradesh. She is the author of Dreams After Darkness, a powerful and deeply reported account of the years of militancy in Punjab. Beyond the newsroom, Manraj has contributed her expertise on global platforms. She has served as a consulting editor with the Asia Pacific Adaptation Network, worked as a publishing consultant with the Asian Development Bank in Manila, and helmed the international peer-reviewed journal Gender, Technology and Development as its managing editor. Her work reflects a rare blend of sharp reportage, intellectual depth, and a deep sensitivity to the human stories. Without much ado, I invite on stage Dr. ASHWINI and MANRAJ GREWAL Sharma. Sir's book, Guardians of the Republic, has formal release today, so I also invite on stage in Chandigarh. So I also invite on stage Dr. Sumita Mishra, the festival director. The book is formally going to be released next month. A big round of applause, dear audiences. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Manraj Grewal. The stage is all yours.
Good job, Sunana. It's a privilege to have a former Union Minister of Law here talking about a book that is yet to be released, but that has got tremendous praise from the reviewers. It's a book on democracy, human dignity, and leadership. And it's part of a trilogy. It's the last of a trilogy. And it's not something that is meant only for lawyers or legal or people. It can be read by anyone. The book is dedicated to former Prime Minister, late Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. And there's plenty of poetry in it. So if you pick it up, you will definitely read it. So, sir, what inspired you to write it?
Well, I think that question is the key to the book. When my term in the Rajya Sabha ended in 2016, and by that time I was fortunate enough to have achieved all my aspirations, I thought to myself, what should be one's purpose in life now? And after some reflection, I thought that the promotion of human dignity should be one's purpose in perpetuity. And that is how I started reflecting on issues that concern human dignity. I felt that democracy, as probably the best form of government, was best only insofar as it is anchored in the idea of freedom, in the idea of dignity, in the idea of justice. And that is how I started writing. And this third book is probably the last in the trilogy and is a sequel to my earlier two publications. The second was A Democracy in Retreat, Revisiting the Ends of Power. And the pervasive theme of this book, which anybody could gather by reading a few pages of the book, is about the idea of liberty, the idea of justice, and the idea of dignity that runs through every single page of the Indian Constitution. I often say that Indian Constitution may be a libertarian constitution, but it is above all a dignitarian constitution because it concerns itself about the dignity of the human being. And that is why the sacrosanctity of fundamental rights. But the structure of this book is not only academic, it is contextual. I have given my arguments why India needs to resurrect an ailing democracy in the background of the recent challenges that we are facing in this country. Most of these have found their way to the courts of law and have been reflected in the judgments. So I think, as you rightly said, this book is about dignity and justice and the state of a democracy. And anyone, students, intellectuals, lawyers, professionals who are interested in where the state of the nation is, may find this useful.
It's equally about leadership. So there's this common thread that runs between justice, human dignity, and democracy. The importance of leadership. What do you have to say to that? Leadership,
Manraj, is key to any form of government, to any political mobilization. It was leadership that defined for us the role of the people of India during the freedom struggle. It is leadership that created what is now proudly being proclaimed as the third largest economy of the world. So leadership at all stages of the Republic's life has been critical to its future. And for example, I've quoted Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. I've been a congressman all my life. But I was touched by some of his words. He said, "Haar nahi manunga, raar nahi thanunga, kaal ke kapal par likhta mitata hoon, geet naya gata hoon." So he was a leader who gave hope to the country. Manmohan Singh was a leader who showed the right path for the country. Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, when he became Prime Minister, was the first to talk about the technological revolution, and people teased him about computers and all, but he could see that that was necessary. And of course, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and those who were the founders of this country had a blueprint. They provided leadership. Above all, they provided moral leadership in terms of what they felt was good for the nation. It was a leadership wedded to the idea of inclusion, not to the idea of exclusion, to harmony and justice.
So what do you think about the present day leadership? Across board, the ruling party, the opposition?
Well, look,
also the discourse,
yes,
the public
yes,
discourse.
Yes, and I must say that before, because my book talks about the value of decency in public life. People who think that politics is not about decency, I disagree with them. And I've been accused by my well-wishers, by my friends, of being too much of an idealist in politics, which is really about real politics and really about pragmatism and really about what you can do and you cannot do. I disagree with that. At the end of the day, leadership must be about idealism. It must be about doing the right thing in the right way. And all parties have produced good leaders and not so good leaders. I would not say that the present leadership is all bad. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that calling anybody names furthers the cause. But the lowering of political discourse, the complete lack of civility in political discourse worries me as a citizen of this country. And for this, the responsibility rests on everyone's shoulders. Nobody's better than the other. Everybody is doing, one up as far as calling each other names is concerned. It minimizes democracy. It minimizes the challenges before the republic, and it minimizes what public life is all about. Public life has been about power, but power to do good. Power not as an end in the raw. Power tempered by moderation. Power tamed by the discipline of the Constitution. Power accountable to the people and accountable to the moral conscience of the nation. And that is why I must make a point. There can be no democracy without the right to dissent. It is only dissent that validates democracy. So conditions for that freedom of expression must be created by the governments of the day.
Absolutely. And so your party has very famous said, Samvidhan khatre mein hai, Constitution is in danger, and of paints a picture of almost an apocalypse. How do you explain that? It doesn't seem to be getting any votes, regardless of how much noise it makes.
You know, I was a proud member of the Congress Party for 46 years. I continue to subscribe by its values, although I'm no longer a member of the party. So therefore, I speak as a free citizen, untrammeled by disciplines of party whips. But let me tell you this, that when people say Samvidhan khatre mein hai, it just cannot be a slogan. You have to go and tell the people how is the Constitution in danger. So I think the reason why some of this, which has some validity, is not finding traction amongst the people, is that you are not finding the right idiom of discourse to reach your message to the people. You can't wave a book and say this book is in danger. It means nothing to the people. So therefore, for example, I'll tell you why I'm a bit worried. The three organs of the Indian state, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature, are supposed to work in tandem to advance the purposes and the high purpose of the Constitution. All the three institutions are in a conflict inter se. All the three institutions are competing for increasing space and relevance for themselves in the architecture of governance and in the architecture of power. You see, have you ever heard of every single issue, big or small, reaching the apex court, reaching the constitutional court? These are matters for governance, and where governance is not right, matters do reach the courts. But then have you ever heard of courts dictating the exercise of sovereign discretion, dictating where the road should be built? I mean, there's not a single aspect of our lives where the courts have not been called upon to intervene. Now, if you ask the judges of the court, they will say, look, we don't go and ask people to come to us. When they come to us, if we don't decide, you will say you are abdicating the judicial function. If we decide, you say it is a case of judicial excessism. I think judges have a point. They have a point. But there has to be a discipline in the exercise of constitutional powers. You just can't start trenching on each other's feet. And that is exactly what is happening. And that also is a danger to the Constitution. The constitutional equilibrium of power has been upset. And that's a grave danger. For example, arrests of people. We see every single day, every commercial dispute being converted into an ED matter. And everybody goes to everybody's houses and they just arrest you. And after years, then the person goes scot-free. Not a tear is shed. Who is going to be accountable for the loss of freedom? Look, I have written this book with great passion. Why? I believe India is a country born to freedom, born for freedom, and anchored in freedom. But I don't see freedom around me anywhere. Social freedom, intellectual freedom, political freedom, cultural freedom. No. So something is amiss. And I'm not going to apportion blame. I think all of us are a part of the same hypocrisy at some level. But the fact is that things are not right, and we need to correct them. So that is why I say this book is not despondent. It's not about despondency. I've tried to balance anxiety with hope. This book is about an allegiance to the idea of freedom and human dignity. And that is why it concerns us all. And that is why it must mean a lot to all of us. So it's not only a lawyer writing high-flown legal ess or something. It is about the everyday concerns of the people. People feel the same way that I do, but most people can't articulate it, perhaps.
And how free is the judiciary? Because it's coming for a lot of attack. Look at the social media. There'll always be some jibes at your lordships and all of that. So what do you think about that? And also this whole process of selecting judges. That has been somehow compromised, and there are judges of a certain inclination who are being elevated. So how would you say about that?
Well, I may not be entirely objective on this, because as the law minister, I had proposed changes in the collegium system. I think it is absolutely wrong. It's flawed to its core to say that the independence of the judiciary can be ensured only when judges appoint themselves. Absolutely wrong. The best judges in the country were appointed when only the executive had the right to appoint them. The judges had no say. And even the judges concede that the finest judges that the Indian Supreme Court ever had were the judges that were appointed before 1991 when the collegium system was not in place. And then to say that you can't have a law minister being part of the collegium system because that will compromise the judicial independence because the government of the day will have its say is wrong, because the law minister of the country represents the billions of people in this country. And then the second question, which is a very fundamental question, how free is the judiciary? Judiciary is absolutely free in terms of its function of judicial adjudication. I don't believe any government goes and says, no, you must decide it in a particular way. However, having said that, no judge finds himself in several ways above the government of the day. The judiciary is a part of the Indian state. The judiciary is the third pillar of the state. It is not to say the judiciary is not part of the government is wrong. The Supreme Court itself in a number of judgments has said the judiciary is a part of the Indian state. So I don't think it is right to argue that only when the judiciary decides against the government is it free. It's free. I don't buy that. The judges also ought to be conscious of the felt sensitivities of the nation, the priorities of the government of the day, which at the end of the day represents the people of this country through the parliament. So they cannot live in their own ivory tower. I don't think that is the right way. And judges do not. In fact, the judges do say that, look, we are also supposed to be respecting the felt sensitivities of the people, and that is where the concept of the living constitution comes in. The constitution is not a static document. Why? Because it has to respond not to the challenges of the next week, but to the challenges of the centuries to come. So it has to be a dynamic, a living, a speaking code for the republic. And I must say that the judiciary has, in some of its judgments, performed a stellar role. They have given to us a very fine vision of what the Indian Constitution is. The trouble with the Indian Supreme Court is that it is not enforcing its own edicts. And if I'm not mistaken, Dhananjay Chandrachud, in one of his judgments, said that judiciary is not only the propounder of the Constitution, it must be the enforcer of the Constitution. They say all the right things, but they don't enforce them. That is why there is a decline in the credibility of the highest judiciary.
And in your last chapter, you've spoken about how this particular judgment on the powers of the governor to give his assent to a bill, how that's going to be very significant for the future of the democracy. Now that ruling came last week. What do you have to say to that?
Well, the original ruling came a few months earlier. Now in the advisory opinion. Now there's another huge issue, which I've written in my article. The opinion of the Supreme Court under Article 143, by definition, is advisory. It advises the President of India that in their view, this is the correct legal position. But in this particular case, the advisory opinion stems from a binding judgment of the Supreme Court, which till now, under Article 143, the binding judgments have not been set aside. But there is something in this latest judgment which says, no, in certain circumstances, the advisory opinion can also undo an earlier judgment, which was not, to the best of my recollection, the law earlier. But this judgment has only confounded the confusion. The earlier judgment, the logic of the earlier judgment was unexceptionable. The logic was that you can't indefinitely thwart the will of the legislature who represent the people. The governor has the sovereign discretion, but it has to be reasonably exercised. So inordinate delay is an abdication of a sovereign function. That was the underlying premise of that judgment. Now, this opinion says that You cannot question the subjective satisfaction of the governor. You cannot question the subjective satisfaction of the president. And you cannot fix timelines, all right. And then in the later part of their judgment, they say, however, if it is an inordinate delay, you can invoke the jurisdiction of courts. I don't know. No, but it's contradictory in terms. It's confounded the confusion. There's no clarity. The net result of the judgment would be if the governor so wants. And I'm not saying that governors always act unreasonably. They don't, because they are also conscious of the responsibilities of their position. But if the governor in a particular case chooses not to react at all, or not to give assent or to return the bill for reconsideration, there's hardly any recourse. And this theoretical window is of no consequence, because that process itself will take years before a decision make. And contrast it with the Supreme Court's decision directing the Speaker of, I think, Maharashtra or somewhere, or Jharkhand, I don't remember, to decide the disqualification within a particular timeline. So if the Supreme Court can determine the timeline for the Speaker, why can't it determine the timeline for the governor? The Speaker's jurisdiction also is sovereign within its own domain.
And sir, because we are sitting in Chandigarh, what about the bill that the government proposes to bring about in the winter session, which will pave the way for Chandigarh to have a lieutenant governor? And it's causing a lot of heartburn in Punjab because it feels they are trying to snatch Chandigarh away from it.
Yes, I think, this is one instance that validates the proposition that it is perception that makes the truth. Now, whether it is intended to dilute Punjab's claim on Chandigarh or not, I'm not sure. I don't think that could be the intention. Cannot be, because the reorganization was a political act. And it was premised on a particular basis that Chandigarh would be a part of Punjab, and that is how it should be. But the power to appoint the LG by itself, only by itself, would not dilute that proposition. And they are only taking the power. They may still continue with the practice of the governor of Punjab exercising the administrative function. But until the central government clarifies its intent, I don't think it will be fair to pass a judgment on the motives of the central government. But it has an emotional appeal for the people of Punjab, because Chandigarh was actually made for Punjab. After Lahore, the capital of Punjab shifted to Shimla. From Shimla, it shifted to Chandigarh. And I think Chandigarh has a rightful claim to be the capital of Punjab, and I think it belongs rightfully to Punjab.
And so one last question. So what do you think this difference between majoritarian democracy, because whoever gets the maximum seats runs the country, and is there a difference between majoritarian democracy and a constitutional democracy?
That's the fundamental and the perennial question in constitutional discourses all over the world, not only in India. Look, democracy cannot be divorced from populism, from majority support, from the people's endorsement by way of majority of a particular government or of a particular party. It cannot be divorced from that, because that is the central basis of democratic engagement. However, countries that choose to give to themselves a constitution actually give to themselves a constitutional democracy in which the power which is exercised or to be exercised in the name of the people, who are the ultimate sovereign, has to be tamed by certain disciplines which are inbuilt into the constitution. So constitutional democracy is quintessentially about accountable power, about the exercise of power that is limited by certain constraints of the constitution, constraints of the outer parameters of the functioning of different organs of the state, and by constraints of how the people think the power in the name is to be exercised. So constitutional democracy is what India aspired to be. Our founders gave to ourselves a republic. They spelt out the ideals of the republic. They spelt out the contours of power of the three organs of the state. They also spelt out how this power is to be exercised. So if anybody elected by the people chooses to arbitrarily exercise power, that power is liable to be struck down as unconstitutional. It will not be a defense to say that the person who has exercised the power is elected by majority, therefore he can do what he wants. That is not our system of government. So that is the essential difference between majoritarian democracy as a constitutional democracy. And I pray to God with all my heart, and I hope our prayers will be answered, that India remains a constitutional democracy.
You're hopeful. Thank you so much, sir. And please pick up this book. It's right there and read it. If you are a citizen of India, and you should know about justice, human dignity, and our constitution. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for a wonderful session, and you very well suggested the nomenclature, dignitarian constitution, and you know how it is important also to bridge the gap between theory and praxis, and yeah, how constitution remains a living, breathing document, and how it and experiences into wisdom, and each story holds a spark of memory, of truth, of imagination that can outlive